Okay, so let's proceed to auditing accounting estimates. Let's define first accounting estimate. So accounting estimates, it's an approximation of the amounts in the absence of precise means of measurement. Therefore, you are just estimating kasi hindi pa readily available yung actual amounts. So, ano ba yung responsibility ni auditor when it comes to accounting estimates? So we have to obtain as an auditor sufficient appropriate evidence that estimates were properly accounted. Okay? So para malaman natin na properly accounted yung estimates ng client natin, it really requires us knowledge of the business and the application of relevant financial reporting standards. Ayan. So another one, we have to check if the estimates were reasonable. So how to check if the estimates are reasonable? So we have to obtain understanding of the procedures and methods, including the internal controls. We have steps in obtaining sufficient appropriate evidence when it comes to accounting estimate. First step is we have to review and test the process used by the management to develop the estimate. So this will often involve evaluation of data and management assumptions. Ano ba yung ginamit ng assumptions? We have to test its calculations if tama ba. Ayan. And comparing prior period estimates with actual results. And considering management approval procedures. So, ayan. Another step is make an independent estimate. So, ni-review, tapos mo na-review yung process, tinest mo din yung process mo, process used by the management, then you as an auditor, gagawa ka din ng independent estimate mo. The auditor may make or obtain an independent estimate and compare it with the accounting estimate prepared by the management and review subsequent events which confirm estimate made. So transactions and events which occur after period end but before the completion of the audit may provide sufficient appropriate evidence regarding an accounting estimate made by the management. So after performing the above procedures, the auditor should make a final assessment of the reasonableness of the estimate based on the knowledge of the auditor of the business and whether the estimate is consistent, okay, with the other audit evidence obtained during the audit. Next is using the work of an expert. Okay, so let's define first, sino ba yung expert? Okay, an expert is a person possessing special skills and knowledge and experience other than the work of an accountant. Kung ano yung mga bagay na kailangan sa audit na hindi naman natin linya or expertise, pwede tayong gumamit ng expert, mag-approach ng expert for us to provide reasonable assurance na tama yung magiging conduct ng audit natin. Okay, lalong-lalo na kailangan si expert pagdating sa mga valuation of assets, actuarial computation, valuation ng lupa, hindi naman tayo mga assessors, 'di ba? So we need the work of an expert. Also, we also need an expert to interpret technical requirements, for example, mga legal documents. Hindi naman lawyer si CPA unless CPA lawyer ka. Okay? So you need to interpret legal documents. Kailangan mo ng help from an expert. The auditor's responsibility when it comes to work of an expert is assess the expert's competence. So how do we assess the competence of the expert? So the following factors must be considered when assessing the competence of the expert. First one is professional certification. Nahanapin natin siya ng certification or license ba or membership from a professional body para gain niya talaga yung reputation niya na he or she is an expert for their particular field. Another one, experience and reputation in the field which the auditor is seeking audit evidence. Another responsibility natin as an auditor is we have to understand the field of the expertise of the auditor's expert. Okay, so this understanding should enable the auditor to determine the nature, scope, and objectives that the experts work. So, para ma-understand din natin kung hanggang saan lang yung trabaho ng expert. Hanggang dito lang, hindi dapat siya nangingialam sa course ng audit natin, at yung proseso natin, kung ano talaga yung scope niya lang, yan lang yung dapat niyang ibigay na services in the course of our audit. Another one is we have to establish terms of the agreement with the expert. Ayan. So the auditor and the expert should agree on the matters such as nature, scope, and objectives of the expert work, their duties and responsibilities, timing, and completion. Actually, it's related naman siya sa number 2. And the last one is evaluate the results of the work of the expert. So we have to evaluate the work of the expert. Okay? Ayan. Regarding the financial statement assertion being considered. This would require consideration of the expert's source of data. Saan pa niya nahanap yung data na kinuha niya for the assumption of figures? Anong method yung ginamit niya? The result of the expert's work in the light of auditor's knowledge of the client's business and the results of other audit procedure. Okay. Ordinarily, according to this book, the auditor's expert should enable the auditor to satisfy his objective. So, kung ang objective auditor is tama ba tong estimation ng land nila, appraisal ng land nila, so if hindi na satisfy si auditor, okay, if it's not adequate for the auditor's purpose, the auditor should agree with the expert on the nature and extent of additional work to be performed, or the auditor may perform further audit procedures appropriate in the circumstances. Last but not the least, topic of substantive test is considering the work of internal auditors. So when we say internal auditing, it's an appraisal activity established within an entity as a service to the entity. Okay, so during our preliminary topics, we already knew what is external auditor and internal auditor. Internal auditor are those auditors employed by the company, and we are external auditors not employed by the company, but we are just hired because we have to audit the work of their accountants. Ayan. So, dalawa lang yung proseso na dapat nating i-consider as external auditor pagdating sa work ng internal auditors. First is we have to make a preliminary assessment on the competence, objectivity, due professional care, and scope of function ng internal auditor. So, syempre, i-check din natin yung professional ethics niya. If nagagawa niya ba ng tama yung trabaho niya. After checking preliminary assessment, you have to evaluate and testing the work of internal auditors. How? To confirm its adequacy for an external auditor's purposes, i-check natin whether the work is performed by competent persons. Ayan. So, we have to check also if sufficient appropriate evidence was obtained, nagagawa ba yun ni internal auditor, and appropriate conclusions was reached. Okay? It is important to recognize that all judgment relating to the audit of FS are those of external auditor. The auditor's responsibility for audit opinion is not reduced by any use made by internal auditing. So, we have to remember that. So, that's all for substantive tests. So, our next topic will be audit sampling.